Let's rope Stephen in at this point. So, Stephen, at the beginning of this thing, I said that both of you were ahead of the curve regarding AI, and you were. I'd like to hear from you. We'd like to hear from you about your experience as a general partner with Austin Ventures and how that led to the insight that led to the founding of KUNGFU.AI, if you would.
Thank you, Ralph. And Karim, I just want to echo what Ralph said. That was a tour de force. And I loved your book, and the work that you presented since then has been amazing.
Thank you.
So, yeah, Karim, it does seem like you and I were both ahead of the curve. I started thinking about my company in 2016 and started in 2017. And at the time, I convinced myself, basically based on pattern matching, that AI was going to be the technology that would deeply change the basis of competition, and started my services firm at that time. You know, it came from the front row seat I had to the internet revolution, being at a venture firm from '96 when I graduated from HBS, and was there from '96 to '04. So exactly the .com era. You know, Ralph, I'm not exactly sure how I got that conviction. As I said, I think it was based on pattern matching. But I want to share one pattern that I have seen right now that I think might help put things in context for all the directors on the call. I see a deep parallel from a budget cycle point of view between Netscape going public in '95 and the launch of ChatGPT in 2022. So in 1995, and for those who have, maybe as much gray hair as I do, or maybe more, Netscape went public in August of '95. And I think it took a while for people to really understand that there was something going on. How did this couple-year-old company have a $2 billion market cap? And it was too late for the '96 budget cycle. But 1997 felt like it was the first year that some companies had internet-related budgets. And by '98, it felt like most companies had internet-related budgets. In '99, that companies were doubling and tripling down. And for those, again, of a certain age, we all remember '99 as, going into the peak of the dot-com hype, leading up to the peak. If you take a look at the budget cycles relative to ChatGPT, which was announced on November 30th of 22, it was way too late for the budget cycle of 23, 2 years ago, for people to really understand what was going on. And so in my view, last year was the first year that companies really had AI-related budgets outside of, the few that were far ahead. And so that really maps to 1997. And if that's the case, this year is the company, from my perspective, that feels like most companies have AI-related budgets, which maps to 1998. Therefore, next year, the budget cycle that everyone's working on will map to 1999, where most companies started doubling and tripling down on their internet-related investments. And I think that's what we're probably going to see next year from a budget cycle point of view. And, it's anyone's guess what happens in the equivalent of 2000, which would be 2027. But there's already inflated expectations and valuations out there. So we might expect a correction at some point.
Okay. Karim, where you described in other settings this transformation as inevitable. And I'm just so curious, you're out every day working with companies and directors and boards and executives all over the place. You're deeply engaged with them. How do you see this unfolding and on what timeline? Just thinking of the companies you interact with now, where are companies in terms of this transformation? How and when do they get there?
I think, in January, as the new year turned, I saw a post on LinkedIn by Doug McMillon, the CEO of Walmart, where he listed his top, books he read in 2024. And fortunately, our book was on there. And I was going to write a snarky remark, thank you, but you should have read this 4 years ago when it came out. So look, I think my sense is that there are three things here. First is especially with generative AI now, because this is like the browser moment. Like now all of a sudden we have commoditized and democratized what AI tools can do, and that we can all do AI. Most people are the starting blocks. But unfortunately, most companies are seeing this as a technology enabler, not a work enabler, not a one-on-work transformation. So I think there's a big gap there. And the gap exists because the CEO and the C-suite aren't actually engaging with these tools as they should. So there's a big gap there. Secondly, I think my worry is that there is going to be, just as there was a digital divide amongst citizens in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, there's going to be AI divide with the companies, those that get it and those that don't. And that's going to be a function of both you all as board members and the management teams that you guys are governing and sponsoring. So I think, and I really feel this. And the reason why I'm worried about this is because of just the exponential nature of the technology. Because it's now not about the technology group bring the technology in. This is about marketing changing its workflow. It's about legal changing its workflow. It's about how you interact with customers in a different way. And so that requires wholesale flexibility in being able to change and continue to change. Miki Mikitani, who's the CEO of Rakuten in Japan, says, we need to build change fitness. I call it change resilience to do that. So I think that's missing. The third bit is more good news. There's some proverb in some ancient culture that said, like, when is the best time to plant a tree, right? And the answer is like 20 years ago. The best time to plant a tree is always 20 years ago. When's the next best time to plant a tree? Well, it's today, right? You can start today. And so I think in many ways, I feel like everybody's the same starting gate. And what it requires is commitment by the boards and by management teams to say, we're going to do this. And it's not for the sake of AI. I have to keep reminding you that it's not for the sake of AI. You don't want to be AI first. You want to think about your mission and how AI helps you meet that mission and have a more ambitious mission. Not that the objective is to bring AI into your organization. And I think when you make it a technology play, it's about becoming AI first. And it's like, no, it needs to be about the mission and driving the mission to come through.
Stephen, I want to build on what Karim just said with two questions for you that are related. So we just asked Karim, where are companies in this transformation? Your company is out there every day working with companies as an advisor. Where are the directors and boards you interact with in terms of this transformation? How far along are they? Where are they headed? What are they doing in this area? And secondly, I've heard you talk about how important you see corporate governance in relation to responsible, ethical AI. So I'd like you to talk about those two things. Where are directors and boards you interact with today in terms of this transformation and the importance of corporate governance?
Yeah, thank you, Ralph. The answer to your first question is, and I hope this comes across as being hopeful for the directors on the call, to the extent you're feeling like you might be behind, I would tell you that you are not. It is my experience that almost all directors that we have been, working with and interacting with are very early in their journey, even if they, and many have not even started. And when we give people, safe forums, they tell us, thank you for giving us a place where we can be vulnerable to say, I don't know what I'm doing. I need help. What do I do next? And so, again, I hope that's a hopeful comment to everyone on this call, to the extent you're feeling some imposter syndrome or some, fear that you might be being left behind. I would tell you that you're not. But I do think that, there are people who will be moving ahead and are. I would encourage you to get over any worry about how you might come across. That would be a piece of advice, which is, be willing to be vulnerable and say, you don't know where to start, you need help, etc. Ralph, to your second point, the way I think about this is every technology ever invented by people has been used for good or ill. That goes back to the very beginning. So take fire. So fire has been used for arson, and it also, is used to cook food and to heat our homes. Every technology has been used for good or ill. I believe that we will look back and see AI as potentially the most powerful technology ever invented by people. And therefore, as it's used for good and ill, it's going to be, very extreme. And so I am, deeply invested in trying to make a future that we all want to live in for our kids and our grandkids. And I see only 3 guardrails as it relates to this future. The first is personal values. It's the personal values of everybody, everyone on this call, all directors, everyone in every team that we're on. We all really need to be very focused on our personal values. The second guardrail I see is policy, but I'm not very confident about policy being able to keep up with any technology, let alone this technology, which is moving very fast and also has so much money associated with it. I think that doesn't give me a lot of confidence. And the third guardrail, and the one I am hoping for the most, is corporate governance. I think it is all of our jobs to make sure that this technology is used responsibly. I think our future and the future of our kids and grandkids depends on it. And when people ask me, what are you most worried about in the future about AI as it relates to society? I say, I already see dramatic damage from AI today. As an example, I think that algorithms in AI are largely responsible for the degradation of our democracy today. Social media algorithms. When I look at the state of our kids' mental health, suicide rate among young girls, et cetera, and I have 3 girls and a boy, and their mental health is definitely challenged by social media. I put that at the feet of algorithms of AI, and therefore I put it at the corporate governance of the organizations in the social media space, among others. And so, again, it's all of our responsibility. That's my perspective, and it is something I'm deeply passionate about. So, Ralph, thank you for asking me that question.
If I may add to what Stephen is saying, I just double down on his last comments because I think it's really important. I really think that in this era, the rate and direction of AI and its adoption and its use is dependent upon you all as leaders, because you will be making those choices along the way. Ozge asked me a question in the chat about, the cybernetic teammate example. How should we think about AI augmentation around critical decisions? Well, those are choices that you all need to make yourselves. I have a small framework around that, but ultimately, instead of being passive users of the technology, which what we did in the social media era, we didn't do the clinical trials we were saying that are needed to be done now in the social media era. I think in this era, especially for work, you have to take the responsibility to set the rate and direction. Now, the governance framework happens, but what I saw many governors do is they stop the work instead of thinking about this as a portfolio. There are risks and benefits. You need to assess the risks and benefits and then go where the benefits are, maximize the benefits and eliminate the risks. Because most directors couldn't even spell AI, they just said shut it down or don't go after it. And so I think this is what needs to change. And I think it's our generation of leaders that needs to insert ourselves in these conversations and then also impact the rate and direction of the AI development as it happens, because we'll be creating the demand signals for these companies.
Thank you both. This is powerful stuff. I want to move to questions from our participants in a minute, but I'm going to close with one question, compressing 2 questions, and ask you for quick answers. So, Karim, you are now subjecting all MBA students to a mandatory course on data science and AI for leaders, which is a beautiful thing, and it ties in directly with recommendations in the 2024 NACD Blue Ribbon Commission Report on Technology Leadership in the Boardroom. So if you can give us a quick answer on what do directors need to be doing and companies and boards need to be doing to develop director proficiency training. And this also ties in, I think, to your comments about a learning imperative for continuous learning. What needs to be done to enhance director proficiency, and integrate director proficiency into selection and evaluation of directors. And Stephen, same for you. Kareem's done.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just flash back this slide. I think the curriculum has to be all of this, right? You've got to learn about AI, what it means for business. I often tell corporates, HR people, like they have learning and development organizations. In the era of AI, it has to be learning and doing organizations, right? They have to actually, learning has to be tied to doing. Because you do the AI, build the tools. And what's happened is that you can now, in plain English, build your AI bots and do these things. So doing is important. And then immediately then open up your minds about imagination. Once you do the learning and doing, it's about the imagination. Building proficiency is about change and change management. Most change programs fail. Most change programs don't. And because what happens is we anticipate too long for the change. We think change is difficult. I was talking to Hubert Joly, former CEO of Best Buy. He's a senior lecturer here at HBS. He's got this great book, Straight from the Heart, about change at Best Buy, right? And he goes, maximum 2 years. 2 years, that's too much for change and change management. Same thing at Rakuten. And so what I would say is that the change side is something that you all need to get comfortable with, but you now need to push to your management teams and get the management teams to also accelerate change programs. It's uncomfortable, we know, for change. And we just have to build this change resilience thing. And then again, I don't want to ignore the caring bit that we have talked about quite a bit.
Stephen, same question for you. What do we do to enhance director proficiency and to build it into board recruitment and director evaluation?
Yeah, it's a great question, Ralph. Building on my comment about guardrails as it relates to AI, we have worked with the NACD to develop their first board AI governance training. We held the first cohort in August, and the next cohort is going to start in November. And I recommend it to all directors. And the content of that is strategy, governance, and value. So it's helping board members understand what AI strategy looks like, frameworks for AI governance, and then how do you think about value. And I want to pick up on what Karim said, and there's been some in the chat as well, which is boards traditionally have I think rightly spent a lot of time focused on risk and risk management. But in the age of AI, that is incredibly important, to my earlier point about guardrails. But I think it is also critical for board members to lean into the enablement of AI, because the risk of not moving forward is to miss the boat. As I said, I came to believe that back in 2016 and 2017 that AI was going to fundamentally change the basis of competition, forever. And Karim's book, outlines just very eloquently how that has happened and is happening. And so there's a lot of responsibility in the form of boards for governance of this, both from a risk and an enabling point of view.